Hello, fellow book nerds. Let me tell you why The Death of Jane Lawrence is a perfect modern Gothic. Hello, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to this newest video. I don't really know what this is. I guess it's a review, but I read The Death of Jane Lawrence and I have to talk about it, so here we are. The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling is a brand new release, just came out in October, and it's a horror novel, and I just think that it is an amazing Gothic, and I want to break it down for you. So I found this blog article that talks about 10 things that every Gothic novel needs, and I wanted to review this book and talk to you about this book, but I was like, okay, what's my angle here? So I decided we're gonna go through the categories, and in that way I'm gonna talk about the book to you. I hope that makes sense. I'm not some expert on literature, so we're gonna see. I've been so excited to read this book, and it was an experience and a half, so let's talk about it. We should probably start with a little bit of a synopsis. So we're in a historical fantasy, so it's a fictional world, but it's kind of 1800s world. Our world is very similar. I would say that the setting is kind of similar to that period in English history. But we follow a young woman named Jane who has grown up with this really lovely couple who were her guardians because both of her parents died in the war. So she lives with these guardians. However, they decide to move away, and she doesn't want to move where they were going because that's where her parents died and that's where she's from. So she wants to stay in the city that she's living in right now. Her only option really is to get married. Women can't, I don't know if they can't own property, but definitely unmarried women can just live by themselves if they wish so. So she decides that getting married is the best option for her. She does this list of eligible bachelors who she thinks would be good for this business arrangement because she doesn't want to get married with all the emotional stuff. She just really wants to find someone who'll give her freedom. So she approaches this young doctor called Augustine, and she proposes to him that they get married and that she helps him out in his surgery as a nurse and does his book because she's really into accounting. It's kind of like a business arrangement. He's really reluctant at first. Eventually he agrees, but he says there is a condition. Every night she has to sleep in the surgery, and he will go and spend the night in his ancestral home, which is a mansion a little bit away from the town. So every night he will be there, and she must never step foot in him at night. So for her wedding night, there's a bit of a confusion, and she ends up going to this ancestral home, and because of a really, really bad storm, she has to come back and stay the night, although she was on her way out. When she comes in, she finds her husband completely changed. No longer is he the charismatic, strong doctor, but he's whimpering, really scared, thinks he's seeing things, and overall it's just not a good time. It escalates from there greatly. It's a wild ride that I'm not sure I was actually prepared for, but it was wild. This is gonna be a non-spoiler video, so I'm gonna do my best to not spoil any important plot points, but I'm hoping by talking to you about why it's the perfect modern Gothic, I'll be able to convince you to read it, because I do think it's a worthwhile read. So the first requirement of being a Gothic novel is the fact that the action is set in a haunted castle or house. So we definitely have that checked off. The ancestral home is super creepy, dilapidating, completely falling apart, and it has the spookiest of vibes. I mean, no one's allowed there after dark. And are there ghosts? I don't want to spoil it, but let's just say maybe. Requirement number 2 is an atmosphere of mystery and suspense. So the article wrote that objects or paraphernalia which help create the Gothic atmosphere are burial vaults, suits of armor, flickering candles, cracked mirrors, portraits, and evil potions. Not all of it is there, but definitely we have a lot of faulty lighting, faulty pipes, many creepy vaults, all of it present. The vibes creepy. And it also says the concept of alchemy and experimenting with living organisms would now be classed as a science fiction idea, but it began life as an element of the Gothic. Now, messing with the dead, messing with the living, a really big plot point. Like I said, the Augustine is a surgeon and he does encounter some very, very strange cases where he has to operate, and it's all very, very disturbing and very spooky. So the atmosphere was actually probably my favorite part about this book. It was gorgeously creepy and uncomfortable and scary and graphic and gory. So if you're not into that, maybe don't read it. It was really gross. Requirement number 3 is the weather is always awful. I mean, of course, the reason why she can't leave is because of this really big storm, and the big storm happens multiple times. That's what I think it said in England. So that one's checked. Number 4 is there is a ghost or monster. First of all, there are ghosts. I'm just gonna put it out there. I don't know if that's a spoiler, but there's a ghost or a concept of ghosts at least, and there's a lot of talk about monstrosity. It's very interesting how they talked about surgical procedures, being a doctor and all of that, how that's tied into the monstrosity and how it's seen by people in that time because they didn't know that much about medicine. So like fixing scarlet fever was like bloodletting or something, and there was a lot of the main characters describing themselves as monstrous and thinking of themselves as monstrous, and the ghosts also have a greater purpose. So that was a very, very prominent theme, and it's definitely, yes, definitely ticks off. Element number 5 is burdened male protagonist, and is described as aristocratic, suave, moody, solitary, cynical, and nursing a guilty secret. This darkly attractive and conflicted male figure surfaces everywhere in Gothic fiction. Bang on the money, we have Augustine, who has issues. Many an issue. I mean, he's not I don't know if I actually know if he's aristocratic. He has some money, but he's not like super rich. Suave, okay, moody, definitely. Solitary, yep. Cynical, a little bit. Nursing guilty secret, 100%. I actually find Augustine to be a very, very interesting example because I find that in a lot of Gothic fiction, yes, we have a burdened, troubled male protagonist, but they're kind of given slack and they're kind of like they are the protagonist, but really Augustine is not the protagonist at all, and he's moodiness and broodiness and flagging of himself and like being like, oh, I deserve this, I'm the worst person. The main character, the actual protagonist, doesn't really see it as like a valid excuse and does call him a coward multiple times. I like that it's not excuse and it's not like, oh, this poor brooding boy, let's give him a pass. No, sir. He made a mess and now he's refusing to clean it up, so he deserves to at least be shamed a little bit. I'm not saying murder him, but like shame him a little bit. So I really like that, and I think that's quite an update. So that's why it's a modern Gothic. It's quite an update on what I experienced a lot actually as reading Gothics and knowing about Gothic fiction and literature and movies. So I feel like, yeah, the brooding male protagonist is not being excused in this one, and I really liked how his choices were seen as selfish and cowardly, and I mean, I'm not saying she's right, but she's kind of right. And element number 6 is a damsel in distress. So that's a female lead often facing events that leave them terrified, screaming, and fainting. Another thing that I think is quite well updated into our modern sensibilities. I would not call Jane damsel in distress. However, I would say what I really liked about her is that she did show emotions and she did show fear and she was really freaked out. And I like that she wasn't this like super strong female protagonist, doesn't scare of anything, sees super disturbing stuff, is just like, yeah, whatever. No. She's like freaked out. Like, these things happening to her are freaking terrifying. And the things she needs to do are terrifying. And she is scared. There's a lot of crying, a lot of screaming, a lot of running. But it's natural and it's completely understandable. And it's not trying to make her into this superhuman superhero that isn't scared of anything. But rather, showing that she has these emotions. She's scared, but she stands up and does something about it, and that's what separates her from Augustine, because she actually takes charge. She actually tries to fix the problem instead of just sweeping it under the rug and being like, yep, this is what I deserve. So I really enjoyed this, and she was definitely a very active protagonist, even if you don't agree with all of her choices, and it was really weird towards the end, and I was like, I'm not sure I'm 100% on board anymore. It's still really powerful to see Jane just go for it and work for it and struggle and succeed, and I really enjoyed that. And again, would not call her damsel in distress. Well, she was distressed, but she no damsel, and I really liked how that was updated and how she took so much charge but wasn't perfect at the same time. I think that can be a hard line to toe for some authors when they feel like if they don't want to make like a wimp, they gotta make a superhuman. That's not realistic or compelling at all. But that's not Jane. She's flawed, but I would say she's a very, very interesting protagonist, especially for Gothic. Element number 7 is dreaming / nightmares. A really big part of the book. There's a whole, I don't know, what do you call dreaming? Hallucinating? Just a lot of visions and stuff like that. So that's definitely ticked off. Yep. Melodrama is the 8th element, and it says emotions ride high in Gothic literature, reflecting a heightened sense of drama. Women have a tendency to swoon, and men rage in reflection to unseen inner torments. There are also murders, kidnappings, and people going mad. The villain is usually the central character, but fate intervenes in the end to ensure good triumphs over evil. That's one thing when I was reading this list that I would say is not really a thing. I wouldn't say this was melodramatic at all. It was dramatic, but it wasn't dramatic to the point of being ridiculous. There's not really rages, there's not really swooning. Does good triumph over evil? I guess. Questionable, but yeah, I guess. But that would be something that, again, I would argue that it was like an update on a common trope in Gothic fiction that we now probably would see as ridiculous because we're not. Are we not as dramatic? I don't know. I feel like current readers are maybe a little bit less prone to hysteria, and maybe less prone to the melodrama. So it's definitely updated to fit those sensibilities. 9th element is death. So yeah, there's a lot of death in this book. It's a big main theme. It's source of our problem. It's a solution to our problem. It's everything in between. And the book is called The Death of Jane Lawrence. And the last element of a Gothic novel is the beast within. When I think about this, I think things like, Jekyll and Hyde when it's very, very explicit. But it's just general the man fighting with his inner demons. And it's definitely part of this as well. There's a very, very big theme of things growing out of place as a result of people's actions. If you read the book, you know that it's very, very literal what I'm talking about, but it is definitely a very big theme. So I would give it a pass for that one as well. So those are all the elements of a Gothic that I think Jane Lawrence smashes it at. I do want to just share some overall thoughts. I don't know how helpful this was as a review, but I'm hoping that if you also like Gothic fiction, you're thinking, okay, this is the one for me. I really, really loved The Death of Jane Lawrence. I had very big expectations. I was, for some reason, unknown reason, I think it was the cover, really drawn and fascinated by this book, and I ended up really just like devouring the first 50%. I could not put it down. I was so bewitched by it. It's just the atmosphere and the sense of suspense and us not knowing what's happening. All of that was so compelling. I would say the second half, or like the last third, really kind of lost me. Not in a sense that it was bad, but I felt like it was really dragging. I understand what it was going for, and I understand that the madness was a big theme, and it kind of devolved into a little bit of like a dark academia in a sense. And I really do appreciate what it did, and I really like what happened. Like, I'm not having complaints about what happened, but I did find it a little bit tedious to get through. So I would say the last third dragged for me personally, but overall I still would really recommend this book. I do think that it was really good read, and like I said, it was the perfect Gothic. It gave me all the feels that good Gothic should give you, and it was super atmospheric, really interesting themes explored, and really, really good writing. So if it sounds interesting at all to you, I would really recommend. I think this was a super fun book. Let me know if you've read the book. If you did, what did you think about it? And let me know if you enjoyed the video. Is this a fun concept for a video, or should I just have done a normal review? let me know. Oh, and I gave the book 4 stars, so I thought I'd just update you. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you could like, comment, subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Really helps me out. But that's it from me, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!